And as always, we like to hear from you, so we have opened up the studio lines already at 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622 for those of you who can't spell. Hey, occasionally we're lucky enough to have a guest on the show who's got some actual significant experience and, dare I say, even a bit of celebrity. Well, you know what? This week we're especially lucky because we've got not one but two guests, each of whom has significant professional experience related to sports. This week I'm joined by George Dorman and Tony Meola. Now, George Dorman, you may know, he's been on the show before. He is an award-winning sports writer and published author. He writes regularly for Sports Illustrated, and if the name sounds familiar, well, it's because he's been all over the radio this week because of the amazing article that he wrote breaking down the whole Jim Tressel Ohio State football scandal. Now, aside from being one of the best investigative sports journalists in the business, George is also a well-respected author who wrote an amazing youth basketball expose that we actually highlighted on the show a few months back. It's entitled Play Their Hearts Out. And if you're the parent or a coach of a talented young basketball player and you haven't read this book, you have made a life-changing mistake, my friend. So you get your butt over to Amazon and buy this book. It's called Play Their Hearts Out. And listen, as good as the book is, and it is great, I got to tell you, you could not turn on a sports radio program anywhere in the country this week without hearing George elaborate on his article about the Jim Tressel Ohio State football fiasco. Now, if you haven't read it, get your hands on the June 6th edition of SI immediately, because later on in the show, George is going to join me to discuss this article and the subtleties behind what has clearly become one of the most talked about scandals in all of amateur sports. But before we get to George, like I told you earlier, we were indeed lucky this week. I am very excited to have on the show with me someone who not only has insights into the youth sports equation, but also has moved on to become a professional athlete, as too few of us actually do. So this week I'm especially pleased to have with me a gentleman by the name of Tony Meola. Now, those of you who are soccer fans do not need me to explain who he is, but for the rest of you, Tony Meola represented the U.S. men's national team in not one but two FIFA World Cups in 1990 and 1994, posting 31 shutouts as the U.S. goalkeeper. Tony is a New Jersey native. He played professionally for the New York, New Jersey Metro Stars from 1996 to 98, played for the New York Red Bulls in 05 and 06, and in between, he starred in goal for the Kansas City Wizards, led them to the MLS Cup title in 2000 when he was actually named the league MVP. Now, before I ramble on too much and ooze about Tony and his background, I'd like to formally introduce him to the show. Again, I want to welcome Tony Meola to the show. Tony, good morning, Tony, and welcome to Hey Coach, Tony. How you doing this morning?
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Well, not as glad as we are to have you, man. Now, listen, I know you got a lot to say, and it was everything I could do not to keep you on the phone during our prep a lot longer, to just keep telling stories. And I know people are going to be excited about what you have to say. So we're opening up the studio lines at 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. Now, Tony, for those of you who don't know, happens to be in the New England area this weekend, and he's here for a specific reason. And when I heard about it, I was really impressed with what Tony's doing. So before I jump in with my selfish questions about the stuff I want to talk about, Tony, do us a favor. Why don't you tell us about the start of your weekend, what you did yesterday, and what's coming up? Because I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I'm here in the Boston area with Allstate, who is a sponsor of the U.S. men's national team, and we travel around the country to various men's national team games and Major League Soccer games, and we try and engulf ourselves in the community a little bit and get the fans involved. And today we'll be doing the Allstate Fan Zone over at Gillette Stadium. But I think you're referring to last night. One of the neat things we do is we go into communities with underprivileged programs, and we put on a clinic. These are kids. Last night's kids were a group out of Providence, and it's a surprise clinic, and none of the kids know what's going on. As a matter of fact, they don't tell me which team it is. I get all the background when I get to the field. They Allstate goes in and supplies these kids with a clinic. We give them a speech about staying in school and doing well, and how important all those things are to allow you to play soccer. And then at the end, Allstate supplies these kids. Last night it was 40 kids with brand new uniforms, home and away, and practice, and shin guards, and bags, and balls, and ultimately tickets to today's game. And I was just thinking on the way home last night, if someone would have given me, when I was 13 years old, tickets to see the U.S. against the number one team in the world right now, Spain, what I would have done. I'd have jumped through the roof. So, again, thanks to our friends at Allstate who are engulfing themselves in different communities around the country. I'm able to go around and see these kids and talk to them and enjoy a couple hours with them.
And I got to tell you, you know what, Tony? You are a sponsor's dream. You snuck Allstate in there like 5 times, man. Great job.
I didn't realize it. I'm programmed right now.
These guys, hey, whoever their PR guy, they know how to prep, man. Anyway, all kidding aside, you nailed it. A bunch of 13-year-old kids. And by the way, you're downplaying the importance of somebody with a really impressive background like yours. Forget about the shin guards and the balls and the bags. They got a clinic from a very esteemed professional athlete, and I wouldn't downplay that, and nor would I downplay what you're doing with this autograph session with Allstate again. That's taking place at Gillette Stadium today, right? The game is today?
I'll be there from 2 to 4.
From 2 to 4, and that's it. The U.S. is playing the number one team in the world, Spain, and again, thanks for filling us in on the details there. Do us a favor, before we start getting to some of the specific youth sports stuff, I outlined a little bit of your experiences as a professional athlete. Would you care to give us a little bit of a snapshot into what it was like for little Tony as he was growing up playing sports, a little bit of a backdrop?
Well, I grew up in an area, unlike most in the country, that it was really cool to play soccer. The whole area was... other than my family and my best friend's family, we were the only 2 Italian families, it seemed like, in the entire town. Everyone else was English and Irish.
Wow, what part of Jersey is that?
yeah. So, soccer to them, all my friends are first generation here in America. I'm first generation. I didn't grow up speaking English. Italian was the first language in my household. So we grew up with parents that soccer was the sport, obviously, that they grew up watching in their home countries, and we had a bunch of families that we had working dads, working moms. We were left on our own, finding our way down to the field and playing. And playing was all my friends wanted to do. I think today I look at my own kids. I've got 3 kids that play multiple sports, and I look at my own kids, and they don't play a heck of a lot if it's not organized.
Oh,
right?
okay.
If you don't schedule a practice at 5 o'clock, it's very difficult. And I happen to have 2 boys and a daughter, age-wise, in the middle of those 2, and they're okay with going out on the lawn and playing, and we encourage them to get outside and play wiffle ball and do all these things as long as it's outside and they're playing hard. We're happy. But in this country here, it seems like we don't get to. I don't drive around streets anymore and see kids playing stickball.
No, you outlined one of the major differences, and by the way, I think you and I are right around the same age. So when we grew up, my son doesn't know what stickball is, and that's a shame because you know what? That was some of the most fun we had. I mean, listen, what did we do? Every morning you woke up, maybe you choked down a little breakfast, especially in the summer, and what'd you do? You went outside until the first kid got called in for lunch by his mom. And then what happened after lunch? You went back out and you played until the first kid got called in for dinner. That does not happen anymore. That's clearly the case. That's a shame.
Well, it's exactly right. And I'll tell you what, I taught my 8-year-old last week how to stuff a wiffle ball bat. I cut the bottom, I put the newspaper in, and he'd have thought I invented, sliced bread. They don't get it right now, and it's just a part of the culture that we grow up in right now. Everything's got to kind of be figured out for them. We take them to the practice. I understand times are different. I was talking to a parent that my older son plays baseball with, and he said to me, "Do you remember when you used to get on your bike and you used to be gone for 5 hours a day?
Without a cell phone.
We had no cell phone. We didn't bring a bottle of water. We didn't hydrate, you know.
And we made it okay.
Yeah, and I'm still living, you know. And we talked about it. It's just completely different now.
No question about it. We're kind of alluding to parents, and we're going to talk a bunch about that because that's really what the show is about. It's really about parents and coaches. But what were your parents like when you were growing up, specifically in the soccer ranks? Did they come to all your games? Were they loud and visible parents? What were your parents like when you were playing as a kid?
They weren't loud. My parents, you know, my dad and mom grew up here. Grew up in Italy, and you know, grew up with spoke with a heavy accent. And they used to just sit in the corner, and they didn't bother anybody. But my mom was there for everything. My dad was obviously working hours. My dad was a barber, you know, and he was at the mercy of the customer, and he worked for hours on end. On the weekends, he saw my games. And it wasn't until high school where my dad realized that, you know, I was leaving right after high school. I had committed to go to the University of Virginia. That my dad actually started taking half days at work to make it to high school games at 3:00.
Well, that's a lot easier when you know college is paid for.
Yeah.
I mean, you did receive a scholarship.
I suppose it is. And but still, he didn't think of it that way. It was he had to see his boy play, you know, as much as possible before he headed off to college, and hopefully and then some. And you know, they weren't loud. They didn't push me. My father used to say to me all the time, you know, I wish I had what you had, you know, growing up. But I hope you take advantage of it. And it's the exact same thing I tell my son now. As many things as I do now, I look at my oldest right now because he's sort of the closest to, you know, high school and college and all. He's going to be a freshman, and I say to him, you know, son, you don't have any idea what you have right now. You know, we didn't have all this training. We didn't have cross training. We didn't have speed and agility coach. We didn't have, you know, a weight coach. We didn't have a hitting coach. You know, you figured all that stuff out on your own.
Now, isn't it? Now, hang on a second, Tony.
Bats.
Hang on. Aren't you embarrassed?
And there were 3 bats, and if the kid before you got a hit, you used that bat. If you didn't, you used the next bat.
Now, aren't you embarrassed?
That's how it went.
Aren't you embarrassed to be telling these I walked to school uphill in the snow stories? Did you ever think, when you heard those stories as a kid, that you would ever repeat them as a dad?
No, it's one of those things, you know, I thought they were lying. Unfortunately, it's true.
Because I do the same thing. I mean, if I could trade places with one person in this world, I would trade places with my son. Because they really don't know how good they got it, man. It really is something special to see. Hey, folks, listen. We're going to lose track of time all day today. I can tell already, and we're going to have to go to a quick break. Tony,
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're with Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio this fine Saturday morning. And this morning we're joined by Tony Meola, former professional soccer player, goalkeeper extraordinaire. I'm not going to go through his whole resume after each break because the guy's just done too much. Tony is with us this morning. And, hey, Tony, you mind if we take a couple of phone calls?
No, absolutely.
All right, because I think we got David calling in from Somers, New York, who is on line 2. Hey, David, you're on Hey Coach Tony with Tony Fiorino and Tony Meola. How you doing this morning?
Good morning, Coach Tony. Actually, it's Mark, Coach Tony, and Mr. Meola, it's a pleasure and honor to speak with you. I have a quick question, Tony. As you were growing up, with your storied career and growing up in Jersey and playing on the national team, what's the difference now between the U.S. Soccer Development Academy and the ODP program when you were coming up in terms of exposure? Our son, Taylor's, just got a scholarship to BU, just like one of the other kids in Somers, Brian Span, that's going to your University of Virginia and doing extremely well. What's the difference? And as you said, I think the development part of this has been somewhat challenged, as you've alluded to. Kids don't play. Everything's structured too much, and I think there's barriers to entry as it relates to money and resources moving forward. So I'd like your opinion on that process as opposed to when you played and the way things are going now at the higher levels.
Well, the process is a little bit different. We did have ODP, but it was run through the state team programs. They just revamped the program to make it a national program. What we didn't have is these academy programs now, and you know, I think the academies do a lot of good. I also think at some point we're going to sit back and wonder if that's the only way to go. What the academy program does, and I know in New Jersey we have 4 academy programs. One of them is obviously run by Red Bull and their academy. They're at a huge advantage because the kids who go to play for Red Bull don't pay to play, just like all the MLS academy programs. So there's 20 of those around the country, but that's really it. After that, the kids in the other academy programs are paying a fortune. And what it does sometimes, I look at my club team program, which we play out of Toms River, New Jersey. It's probably better known for youth baseball than it is for youth soccer, but just a township full of great athletes. And I've got kids in that program that academy programs are begging me to take. And I said, you know what? You're more than welcome to have them. The issue is they can't pay. They can't drive. Their parents can't drive an hour and a half to the practices every night. They can't. With these academy programs, when you're home, when your games are home, they're home. But like in the Northeast region, if you're a team from New Jersey, you have an away game. Could be in Massachusetts, could be in Vermont, could be in Maryland. So you're essentially like a small college. Well, somebody's got to fund hotels, somebody's got to fund buses, somebody's got to fund all the things that go along with traveling for 2 days and taking a whole team. And unfortunately, we've got some kids that belong in the program as far as soccer goes, but they can't afford to be there for a lot of different reasons. And, you just hope at the end of the day those kids don't lose out, because these college coaches now, they just go to these big academy tournaments and they're going to find somebody. Where a team like mine, I have a little bit of an advantage because I know a lot of college coaches, and I've already said, I've got some kids that could potentially be part of your program, but you're not going to see them at academy games, so you're going to have to come and take a look at them.
Oh, that you kind of nailed nailed one right there, in that that is endemic of a lot of youth sports programs. The good old days of there not being enough talented kids, where a kid's going to get noticed anyway. You're right, Tony. If these kids can't get the funding in place to be part of some of these things, whether it's ODP or any of these other academies, coaches have so much talent in front of their face that I think, unfortunately, a lot of these kids are going to start falling through the cracks. Are you seeing that?
Well, I just see it in my own team. I've got, like I said, 4 or 5 kids that could play in any of the 4 academies in New Jersey, just about. Mm-hmm. And they can't pay for it. 2, the majority of those kids play baseball. And once you're married, the academy programs now, which I think is the saddest part of the academy programs in New Jersey. I don't know how it is in the rest of the country because I don't get to follow it. But once you sign up for the academy program, you can no longer play high school soccer. You're
really?
Married to the academy training and the schedule. And I just think that's one. I understand that the academy program, the level of soccer is so much higher than high school. I get it. I understand you're trying to develop players, but the social aspect I can't imagine if you'd have stripped me of my high school baseball, basketball, or soccer experience. Those are the kids I hang around with, the guys I hang around with now.
And isn't it sad?
High school with.
And isn't it sad that they're really forcing? Not asking, not requesting. They're forcing these kids.
It's part of the requirement. That's it. You don't have it. They're not even asking you. They're not even telling you. That's it. That's it in a nutshell.
Man,
you want to be here. This is the deal, and parents are buying into it. The problem is when these academy programs are over and the kid goes back to high school, he doesn't have teammates in high school anymore.
And why do you think they're doing it, Tony? They're selling a dream.
They're disgusted with the level of play of high school, and I unequivocally agree that the level of high school play is not up to standard with the academy program. But you play such a short period of time in high school. I think the high school season in the fall is like 11 weeks or 10 weeks. It's not really going to kill the kid. Their skills aren't going to diminish. They're not going to become the worst player on your academy team because they had this high school experience. Mm-hmm. But coaches at those and directors of those programs, that's what they've said. And
they're charging a boatload of money, and they're selling the dream of the college scholarship to these kids.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And now the epidemic is they're doing this at 9 years old. I got kids that I've been coaching my group for 5 years now. This will be my 6th year coming up, and my last year because of all the schedules next year with high school and different sports and kids going in different directions at 15 years old. And they're selling this program at 9 years old. I got kids at 9 years old that if I'd have videotaped them then, I would have thought that they were world beaters.
And because it changes.
Kids at 9 years old, if you'd have videotaped them, you'd say, this kid will never play in a soccer game. And now that they're 14, those roles are completely reversed.
Yeah, because you don't know what a kid's going to be. I mean, they haven't even come close to starting their physical maturity. I mean, listen, I'm sure you're a baseball guy by heart as well. Cal Ripken's one of my true heroes in life, and he was asked about his own kid. And when his kid was 9, 10 years old, and they said, where does your kid play his travel baseball? And Cal Ripken literally said, why would my kid play travel baseball? He's 9, 10 years old. Yeah. And he firmly believed until the age of like 12 or so, there's really no reason to have to do it. Now, Cal Ripken baseball has become a pretty big deal since then, but when it came to his own kid, he did not play any premier baseball or elite baseball or any other garbage adjectives they use now. Do your kids... I mean, you may be involved directly with the programs, which may be different, but do your kids play in any of these elites?
My oldest plays on a very competitive travel baseball team. He's 13, plays with a group of kids that went to the World Series for Toms River, and my youngest is in that program, but our town league, at Toms River takes precedence, so I don't want him to miss the experience with all his friends because he's the only young kid. He's the only one from our town that's on that travel team. I prefer him just to. He basically fills in with the travel team. I understand the importance of all that stuff, and I understand as long as they're having fun, it's great. And Cal Ripken's a good example. The guy runs probably the biggest baseball travel program and league in the U.S. right now, and his own kid's not even involved at 9.
Yeah, I mean, that's really kind of funny if you think about it. But it goes to show that he provides a product for people who want it, but he has made no secrets about his philosophies about it as well, at least as it pertains to his own kid. And by the way, you and I are leading parallel lives. Our sons are the same age, and we seem to be treating them the same way. My son is 13, and I coach a very competitive, nationally ranked program called Team New York Baseball. And first of all, we got to play each other, and so that's going to happen at some point. We'll cross the bridge, my brother. That's okay. We'll cross the bridge. But all kidding aside, even today, we have a doubleheader down in Queens today, where I'm going to go straight from the show. My son is home playing with his in-town team for one of the last 1 or 2 games. When he had a school game, we made listen, as competitive as we are, we don't start our season until after Memorial Day because we know all our kids play in school, and we don't want to take them away from that. And again, we're a top 5 nationally ranked program, and we still understand the importance of letting these kids play in school. It's a real shame. Now, dude, here's a funny thing. Do you believe that the world's a tiny place, Tony?
Yeah.
All right, so listen to me. If you don't remember the name, it's okay. But at University of Virginia, do you remember a guy by the name of Charles Stevenson?
Say the last name again?
Stevenson.
Charles Stevenson. Why would I remember that name?
Well, he and his now wife, you may remember her as Diane. I can't believe I'm saying last names. They're both going to kill me. Pierce. Diane.
I remember the 2 names, yeah.
Okay, well, they're now married. Charles is the strength coach at University of North Carolina for the basketball team. His wife, Diane, was my first big crush in high school. And I just got an email from Diane. By the way, my email is heycoachtony@gmail.com. And she said, Tony, say hi to Tony from me and Charles. If he may remember us.
Yeah, I do.
Well, Diane, you're probably listening. Charles, I hope you're listening as well. Sorry for giving out your last name, but they live down in North Carolina.
They went down to Carolina?
They're both in North Carolina. Charles is the strength coach. And he is as pretty as a picture, that guy. I want to kiss him. And so does my wife. But in any event, we're digressing a little too much. Tony, I also told you yesterday that this was going to be the quickest half hour of your life, man. We got to let you go. I wanted you for an hour. You tell your publicist that I want a piece of skin out of that guy because you got to come back on the show soon. Promise me?
Yeah, man, absolutely. You know how to get me.
Absolutely. And listen, before we go to break, Tony, stick around because I want you to hear this because a lot of people know that a very dear friend of mine by the name of Lynette Rannicleve, and I hate to bring this thing down a little bit, but this terrific lady lost her battle with cancer just this past December. Last few years of her life, she was very active in cancer awareness. She participated in the Susan G. Komen for a Cure. He used to do this Relay for Life event that was kind of obscure some years ago, but this year my hometown hosted its own first annual Relay for Life. It was last night starting at 7, and it ended this morning at 7. There were kids and adults, and the whole town kind of came out, and they were just running around the track for literally, there was constant motion for 24 hours straight. Great food. Lynette's husband, Dan, was a very good friend of mine, along with his kids and the young football players that he coaches, started their own team to raise money in Lynette's honor. The team is called Little Men Representing. The acronym LMR is also the initials of my dear departed friend, Lynette Marie Ranacleve. There has been a terrific outpouring of support and generosity so far from the Ranacleve, for the Ranacleve family's team. And again, folks, you know, this is my last week of begging. I want you guys to donate money. I never ask you to take out the wallets, but take them out today. Go to my website. It's www.heycoachtony.com. There's a pink link at the top of the page. Click it. It's going to take you right to the Relay for Life for the American Cancer Society. I'm not asking you to give $1 million. I want you to give $1. Just $1, man. Please. This terrific lady, I urge you. She was such a source of inspiration for me and so many other folks. She touched so many lives. And, you know, and her husband, Dan, was working his butt off doing dirty water dogs boiled in beer last night with onions and kraut. And you know what? I'm going to pay the price today. But my $100 and some odd worth of hot dogs, I hope, goes a long way to cure cancer. Again, go to heycoachtony.com. Click the pink link on the front page and just give $1 to the American Cancer Society. And please honor the memory of this wonderful lady who I really loved, and I miss her so much. And again, I want to thank Tony Meola so much for joining us today, man. You were a great guest. When we come back from break, folks, we're going to have George Dorman from Sports Illustrated on with us, so don't go anywhere. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. We'll be right back.